My name is Diana. I'm 32, a structural engineer in Chicago, and for years I've been the unofficial emergency fund of my family. I design buildings so they don't collapse, then come home and hold up people who refuse to stand on their own. That night I thought I was doing one last good big sister thing. I had worked late, skipped weekends out with friends, and cut my own expenses to stack enough cash to cover my brother's next 2 months of rent. I put it in an envelope, sealed it, wrote his name in my neat, precise handwriting. It wasn't just money, it was time from my life. When he tore the envelope open at our family Christmas dinner and fanned the bills like a prop, the table leaned in. For a second, I saw something like surprise in his eyes. Then his mouth twisted. "Look at this," he said loudly so everyone could hear. "Our own personal savior. She really thinks we'd all collapse without her." Laughter exploded. Someone clapped. Someone whistled. I stared at him, then at the envelope in his hand. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I simply reached out, took the envelope back, slid it into my bag, and said, "Thanks. You just helped me make a very important decision." The laughter stalled, then wobbled. A few smiles froze. 15 minutes later, those same people would be begging me not to follow through on that decision. But in that moment, all I felt was clarity. Cold, sharp, overdue. Have you ever given a sacrifice from your bones, only to realize the people you gave it to thought it was a joke? Before I tell you what he said next, and what happened after I walked out, tell me, what time is it where you are? And where are you watching from? I want to see just how far this story about family, money, and finally saying enough will travel. His joke still ringing in my ears, I sat there with the envelope back in my bag, and my jaw clenched so hard it hurt. The restaurant was buzzing. Cutlery, background music, forced small talk. But inside my head there was just one sharp thought. They all laughed. My brother finally noticed I hadn't joined in. He lounged back in his chair, stretching like he owned the room. "Relax, Diana," he scoffed, loud enough for half the table to hear. "It's just cash. You act like I owe you a kidney." A couple of cousins snickered, thinking he was being witty. That used to be my cue to swallow it, to smooth it over so the night wouldn't be ruined. This time, I didn't. "You do owe me," I said, my voice calm but carrying. "Not a kidney. Just the last 15 months of rent I paid, the utility bills in my name, and the credit card you maxed out on investments that I'm still digging out of." Forks stopped midair. The TV in the corner, usually ignored, suddenly seemed too loud. My dad's hand froze above his plate. My mom's smile became a stiff mask, like she'd forgotten how to move her face. My brother, Mark, since he's earned his name now, rolled his shoulders as if shrugging off the weight of my words. "You helped because you wanted to," he shot back. "Don't act like I held a gun to your head. You love playing hero." "I helped," I replied, "because every time I said no, Mom called me at midnight to say you were desperate. Dad said you were under stress and needed time. You promised you'd straighten up if I just covered it this once. Then once turned into 3 years." I slid my phone out and tapped a few times, pulling up my banking app. "Do you remember the time you called me sobbing from that payday loan place, saying they were going to ruin your life if you didn't pay that balance in full by Friday?" I tilted the screen so he could see. $2,950. I wired it. "You told me you'd pay it back within 6 months. That was 2 Christmases ago." A muscle jumped in his jaw. "I was going through stuff," he muttered. "Everyone has rough patches." "What about when your car got repossessed?" I continued, not raising my voice. "They towed it from your job, and you called me in a panic because you'd lose everything if you couldn't get to work. I emptied my emergency fund. You made some payments. Then you stopped. The bank kept calling me because I was the cosigner, remember?" Grandma cleared her throat from the far end of the table, her eyes sharper than anyone gave her credit for. "She's not wrong," she murmured, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "I've heard those phone calls. You always say, 'Just this last time, die.'" My mom sprang to life then, reaching across to touch my arm with a too bright expression. "We're not doing this tonight," she insisted. "It's Christmas. Your brother is embarrassed. You just dragged all his problems into the open." "He dragged my bank account into the red," I said. Apparently, that was fine. The air around us tightened, heavy with unspoken history. I could feel the narrative trying to shift, the way it always did, from Mark's pattern of screwing up to my tone, my timing, my refusal to let things go. "Can we talk about this privately?" Mom whispered through clenched teeth. "You're making a scene." "No," I answered, surprised by how steady I sounded. "I've been fixing things privately for years. That's how we got here. If this is embarrassing, maybe it should be." For a moment, nobody spoke. My dad looked at his plate like it might give him an exit line. A cousin checked their phone in fake boredom. Mark's smirk faltered, then snapped back into place. "You're doing all this because I made one joke?" he scoffed. "You always needed an excuse to play martyr. If you didn't want to help, you should have just said no instead of throwing it back in my face now." "I did say no," I said quietly. "More than once. And every time Mom cried, Dad lectured. You promised you'd do better." I caved because I didn't want to be the cold one. "Tonight, I watched you open an envelope full of hours I worked, nights I stayed in instead of going out, projects I took to earn overtime, and you turned it into a punchline." That wasn't a joke. That was a message. I could feel Grandma's gaze on me, proud and worried at once. "She's right about one more thing," she said, cutting through the tension. "You treat her like a bank you don't have to pay back. That's not love, that's convenience." Mark's head snapped toward her, betrayal flickering in his eyes. "Seriously? You're taking her side now?" "There aren't sides," she replied. "There are facts." My mom pushed back her chair a little too loudly. "Diana, come help me in the kitchen," she ordered, not asked. "Now." It sounded less like an invitation and more like a summons to a disciplinary hearing. I followed her, feeling all the stares on my back. In the cramped kitchen, the hum of the fridge and the smell of simmering sauce wrapped around us. She turned on me immediately. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "You humiliated your brother in front of everyone." "He humiliated me," I answered. "And he did it on top of years of taking my help for granted." She threw her hands up. "He's struggling. You know how hard things have been for him. You know he doesn't think like you. You're stable. You're the strong one. That's why you help. That's what family does." "No," I said, feeling something inside me click into place. "That's what I do. Everyone else calls it how things are and lets me drown in it." I met her eyes. "Here's the truth. If I disappeared tomorrow, you'd all panic because of the money, not because you'd miss me. And I'm done living like a walking, talking emergency fund." Her face went pale. "How can you say that?" she whispered. "Because you're proving it right now," I replied. "You didn't pull me in here to ask how I feel. You pulled me in here to make sure I don't turn off the tap." I glanced toward the door where the murmur of the dining room seeped through. "If you've ever had to be the strong one, the responsible one, while everyone else gets to make a mess, tell me this. How long do you think you can keep carrying that weight before something in you finally says, 'Stop'?" We didn't stay hidden in the kitchen. My mother marched back out first, smoothing her hair, pasting on that brittle hostess smile. I followed a moment later, feeling like I was walking onto a stage where everyone already knew their lines except me. The noise in the restaurant dipped the second they saw us, curiosity and judgment mixing in the air. Mark sat with his chair tipped back on two legs, arms folded like he dared me to speak. So, he drawled, voice loaded with performance. Has our beloved sponsor decided whether the fund is still open? There was a time that question would have made me apologize, joke, promise we'd talk later, then quietly fix whatever he'd broken. That version of me was gone. No, I said, staying on my feet instead of sitting. I've decided I'm closing the bank. I reached into my bag and pulled out a neatly folded stack of papers. My hands didn't shake. Not because I wasn't scared, but because I was past fear and into something different. Resolve. I hadn't planned to show anyone these. I'd printed them for myself, trying to understand where my money had gone. But his comment about not being needed had slammed every open tab in my brain into one sharp decision. If this was going to break, it might as well break on the truth. I set the stack down in the middle of the table. This, I said, is every transfer, every cash withdrawal, every bill I covered for you in the last 3 years. Rent, utilities, bailouts, interest, late fees, the time your car got repossessed, the time your electricity was cut off, the card I co-signed so you could build credit, and then you maxed it out on concert tickets and sneakers. I flipped through the pages, reading off a few lines. August 14th, $900 for rent when you said your paycheck was delayed. October 3rd, $650 to clear that payday loan. December 22nd, $400 cash for gifts because you didn't want to show up empty-handed. March 9th, winning $200 to stop your car from being auctioned. I ended on the total, a number I'd stared at alone in my apartment until my stomach turned. This is not a few little favors, Mark. This is a second life I've been financing for you. The room felt like a courtroom suddenly. My dad cleared his throat, his voice strained. You kept track? Like this? Yes, I said simply, because rent is not a hug. Late fees are not feelings. Every time I paid for something, I didn't buy something else. I didn't take a trip. I didn't fix my own car right away. I didn't sign up for my licensing exam because I couldn't afford the prep course after plugging your holes. Mark's face had gone from smug to pale. You make it sound like I robbed you, he muttered. You offered. You're not some saint. You liked being in control. I looked at him for a long second. If control was what I wanted, I wouldn't have spent the last decade terrified to say no. This, I tapped the papers, isn't control. It's evidence of how scared I was to be called selfish by my own family. I slid one more paper to the top, a printed email. This is from your landlord, I said. I asked him for a full record of your payments and who made them. 8 of the last 12 months? Those were from my account. I took a breath. So yesterday I called him again. I told him I will no longer be your emergency contact or guarantor. I asked him to remove my name from anything related to your lease. My mother gasped as if I'd confessed to a crime. You did what? My father's chair scraped back. Diana, that's extreme. You can't just abandon him like that without talking to us. I've been talking, I said, keeping my tone even. I've been saying, I can't keep doing this, for a long time. Everyone heard me. No one listened, because as long as the money showed up, you didn't have to. I turned back to Mark. Next month, he deals directly with you, not through me. Your rent gets paid because you pay it, or it doesn't get paid at all. The begging didn't come all at once. It rippled. Be reasonable, my mom pleaded. He's not ready to handle all that. He'll fall behind, my dad added. He could lose his place. Then what? Then he figures it out, I said. The way I did when I moved out. The way millions of adults do every day. Mark slammed his palm on the table, making glasses jump. You're going to get me kicked out, he snapped. You're doing this to punish me because I'm not a perfect little robot like you. You want me to fail so you can say, I told you so. His words hit a familiar bruise. For years, that accusation had kept me obedient. I thought of all the times I'd whispered to myself, maybe he's right. Maybe I like being needed. But tonight, another thought was louder. Or maybe I've been set up to believe that my worth depends on what I pay for. If I wanted you to fail, I said slowly, I would have stopped helping years ago and never said a word. I've done the opposite. I've held off this collapse for as long as I could. All I'm doing now is stepping aside while you face the results of your choices instead of hiding behind my bank account. I picked up the envelope he'd mocked and held it between us. You wanted a joke? Here's one. I spent weeks scraping this together. Overtime shifts, canceled plans, because I thought 2 more months of covered rent might give you breathing room to change. You opened it and turned it into a punchline. So I'm changing instead. This money is going to my life now, my exam, my savings, my future. The table erupted, not with laughter this time, but with overlapping voices sliding into the same old script. Diana, that's harsh. You don't mean that. You can't say things you'll regret. We're family. We don't do this to each other. Grandma spoke over them without raising her voice. We already did this to her, she said quietly. We just liked it better when she didn't complain. Mark pointed at me, eyes glittering with fury. You think you're better than us. Always have. You loved having the power to say yes or no. You loved hearing thank you and watching us squirm. Don't pretend this is some noble stand. His accusation echoed in my head, old and familiar. You're controlling. You're cold. You're punishing us. But another voice, my own, echoed louder. What if they only ever loved you as long as you kept them comfortable? Maybe I did love feeling needed, I said slowly. Maybe that's why it took me this long to stop. But here's what I know now. Being needed like that was killing me. And if your love disappears the second I set a boundary, it was never love to begin with. It was dependency with a nicer name. I looked around the table, taking in every face. Angry, stunned, uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. If you've ever wondered what would happen if the responsible one in your family finally put everything on the table and said, no more, this is it. It's messy. It's loud. And everyone suddenly discovers an opinion about your life. I didn't slam my way out of the dining room. I just turned and walked down the narrow hallway toward the back, the sounds behind me blurring into a single dull roar. The wall on my right was lined with framed photos from every stage of our lives. My parents cutting the ribbon in front of the restaurant the year it opened. Me as a teenager in a too big hard hat standing next to a half-built bridge. Mark holding up a game controller in triumph. Birthdays where cake frosting smeared across our faces. I'd seen these pictures 1,000 times, but never like this. In almost every one, I was off to the side, slightly behind, holding something. A tray, a stack of plates, a pile of gifts, a folder of college applications, a support beam in human form. Necessary, unnoticed until removed. I pushed open the heavy metal door at the back and stepped into the alley. Cold air slapped my skin awake. Snow from earlier in the day had turned to a slushy crust along the bricks. The restaurant's exhaust fan hummed above, sending out warmth and the smell of garlic and oil into the sharp night. Out here, away from everyone's eyes, my brain did what it always does best, ran projections. Not of buildings this time, but of lives. Scenario 1. I cave. I go back in, apologize for my tone, agree to help until he's back on his feet. Next month, I cover his rent again. The month after that, something else happens. The job doesn't work out, the car breaks down, his roommate bails, and I'm pulled right back into the cycle. 5 years from now, he's still calling at midnight with emergencies. My parents are older and more fragile, and the unspoken rule is that I'll now shoulder their bills too. I'll be in a nicer apartment, maybe, but still watching my savings leak out through everyone else's problems. 10 years from now, I'm the one postponing retirement, relationships, children, because your brother needs help and we can't manage without you. Scenario 2. I hold the line. I don't pay. Next month, he scrambles. Maybe he makes it. Maybe he doesn't. If he doesn't, the eviction notice comes. His credit tanks. He moves in with someone else. There are ugly scenes, late-night calls, maybe some screaming in parking lots. My parents call me heartless. Cousins pick sides. Holidays get awkward or disappear entirely. For a while, I'm the villain in every family story. But I'm also the only one not living with a permanent knot of dread in my stomach every time my phone buzzes. Somewhere between those two scenarios was the truth I didn't want to admit. There was no version of this where everyone ended up comfortable and happy. Someone was going to hurt. The only question was whether I was willing to keep volunteering myself as the sacrifice so everyone else could avoid their own discomfort. The door creaked behind me. I didn't turn right away. "You always did come out here to breathe when things got loud," Grandma said, her voice soft, closing the door gently against the noise. She shuffled up beside me, cardigan pulled tight around her shoulders, breath puffing in white clouds. I stared out at the empty alley, lit by a single yellow street lamp. "I feel like I just dropped a building on all of them," I admitted, "or like I kicked a load-bearing wall out of our family and now everything is cracking." "Maybe it needed to crack," she said quietly. "You've been patching the same fractures over and over again with your time and your money. Patches don't hold forever. Sometimes the whole thing has to be rebuilt." "They're calling me cruel," I whispered. "Selfish, dramatic, like I'm enjoying this." "Are you?" she asked. I let out a humorless laugh. "No, I feel sick." "Good," she replied, and I turned to her in surprise. "People who enjoy other people's pain are dangerous. You're not one of them. You're just finally putting your own oxygen mask on first after a lifetime of handing it to everyone else." She looked up at the dark windows of the restaurant. "Your grandfather used to say, if you carry a full-grown man on your back, don't be shocked when he forgets he has legs. You've been carrying your brother, your parents, their worries, their debts. You think they'll suddenly say thank you when you put them down? No, they'll scream that you dropped them." "They're more than screaming," I said. "They're rewriting it already. In their heads, tonight is going to become the night Diana abandoned us instead of the night we all had to face what we've been doing to her." "Families are very good at telling stories that protect their comfort," she said. "But here's something you might not want to hear. You've been telling your own story, too. The one where you are only valuable if you're useful, where your worth equals your paycheck, where saying no means everyone will leave." Hua, her words landed harder than any accusation from inside. "What if they do?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. "What if they decide I'm not worth it without the money?" "Then you will have your answer," she said, "and it will hurt like hell. But at least you won't be bleeding yourself dry for people who only ever loved your wallet." She slipped her hand into mine, her fingers small and cold but steady. "I watched you grow up thinking you had to be the responsible one," she continued. "You were the kid who organized your own homework, who reminded me about my pills, who asked if the restaurant was doing okay when you were 12. Nobody stopped you. We all let you carry more than your share because it was convenient." She shook her head. "I'm sorry for that." The apology pierced deeper than any of the shouting from the dining room. "You know what scares me?" I said. "If I go back in there and say, 'I'll keep helping,' everything settles. They calm down. I become the hero again. But I'll hate myself every time I transfer $1, and if I don't go back in, I don't know what our family looks like after tonight." "It will look honest," she said. "Messy. Smaller for a while maybe, but honest. And you'll finally get to find out who loves you when you are not holding everyone together." I looked at the metal bar of the back door, the chipped paint, the faint outline of fingerprints from years of pushing it open. On the other side were raised voices, my name in sentences I probably didn't want to hear. In front of me was the cold, dark alley and whatever life I chose to build with the energy I'd been spending on everyone else. Have you ever stood in the kind of moment where you know that whichever way you move, the rest of your life will look different? I asked quietly. Where going back in means choosing the old version of you, and walking away means stepping into someone you don't fully recognize yet. Grandma squeezed my hand. Most people never notice those moments until they've already passed, she said. You're lucky enough to see this one as it's happening. I took a long breath that burned my lungs. Then I reached for the door. I'm going back in, I said. Not to fix it, not to take it back. Just to say the rest of what I need to say and make sure they understand I mean this. Then I'm leaving on purpose, not storming out by accident. That, she nodded, sounds like a woman who finally understands she's not a foundation they're supposed to pour concrete for free into. Together, we stepped back into the heat and noise, toward the final fracture that had been waiting years to happen. When I stepped back into the dining room, the sound dropped a notch. Like someone had turned down the volume. They'd been talking about me. You can always taste that in the air. Mark stood near the tree, arms crossed, cheeks flushed. Mom had that bright, brittle smile that meant she'd been telling everyone to calm down while secretly fueling the fire. Dad stared at his plate as if it might offer a script. So, Mark started, his voice tight. Are you done with your dramatic exit? I walked to my chair, pulled it back, but didn't sit. No drama, I said. Just clarity. I'm not funding your life anymore. I'm not signing for your loans. I'm not covering your rent. I won't be threatened, guilted, or shamed into it. You can't do that, Mom burst out. He'll lose everything. His landlord will throw him out. He could end up homeless, I finished for her. Jobless? In debt? That's where his choices are already pointing. Me paying his rent doesn't fix that. It just hides it. Mark barked a humorless laugh. You think you're some therapist now? This is about power. You like knowing I depend on you. If that were true, I said quietly, you wouldn't have to humiliate me to feel big. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Fear, maybe. Then it hardened. You're going to regret this when nobody visits you in that little condo you're so proud of, he sneered. You'll be alone with your degrees and your spreadsheets. I didn't raise my voice. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who only love me as long as I'm paying. I turned to the others. I love you. I will show up for birthdays, for hospital visits, for actual emergencies, but I will not be the family ATM anymore. That job is closed. The pleas started again, softer now, tinged with desperation. We'll talk about budgets. Maybe just a few more months. You know he's under pressure. That last one snapped something inside me. We are all under pressure, I said more sharply. I've got deadlines that could get people killed if I screw them up. I still manage to pay my own rent. I picked up my coat. You don't have to agree with me, but you do have to accept this. I am done. Walk out then, Mark spat. See if we care. I looked straight at him. You said I wasn't needed. Today, I believed you. The difference is, I'm the one paying for my belief. From now on, so are you. I left to the sound of my name being called, chairs scraping, someone saying, no, please, just listen. But I had listened. For years. This time, I was choosing to hear my own limits instead. If you were me in that room, with everyone begging you to go back to the role that was killing you, would you have stayed or walked? The weeks after Christmas didn't explode, they eroded. That's how real consequences usually arrive, not as a single dramatic thunderclap, but as a slow collapse of everything that never had a solid base. I moved through January by building the life I had been postponing. I used the envelope money as the first chunk of savings for a small condo near downtown, closer to my firm and far away from late-night emergency drives to my brother's place. I registered for my professional engineer exam, booked a prep course, and blocked off study hours like immovable appointments. At the office, I stayed late for projects that excited me, not to avoid going home to another crisis call. Parallel to that, another timeline was playing out a few miles away in my brother's apartment. I didn't see it firsthand at first. I heard it in fragments. A missed call from Mom at 2 a.m. I didn't answer. A text the next day. "He's late on rent. Are you really going to let this happen?" I replied once. "Yes. He's an adult." Silence. Then, on a random Thursday, Grandma called me from a number I didn't recognize. "He lost his job," she said without preamble. "Showed up late too many times," mouthed off to his supervisor. They'd been warning him for months. I closed my eyes. Somewhere inside, the old version of me reached for my wallet. The new version kept her hand still. "I'm sorry he's going through that," I answered carefully. "But that's between him and his employer." "He's angry," she said. "At the world. At you. At himself. Though he won't admit that part yet. He says if you'd kept helping, he wouldn't be in this mess." "If I'd kept helping," I replied, "he'd be in the same mess, just with my name on more paperwork." She sighed. "There's something else. Remember that credit card in your name you paid off last year? The one he swore he'd never touch again? He opened another one, with a different bank. Missed payments. They're calling the house now. They can't reach him." A numb sort of calm settled over me. "That's awful," I said. "But my name's not on it. That's his storm to stand in." "I'm not asking you to pay," Grandma said. "I'm asking you something harder. Can you talk to him without saving him? Just once?" That question haunted me that night. Could I stand in front of the wreckage of his choices and not grab a broom? In February, I got my chance. Mark texted me for the first time since Christmas. "Need to talk." No emojis, no jokes. Just that. We met at a cheap cafe near the train line, neutral territory. He looked smaller somehow. Not thinner exactly. Just deflated. Like the air had gone out of his usual arrogance. "You happy?" he asked as soon as I sat down. "You won. I'm broke, behind on everything. My landlord gave me a final notice. I'm on a probationary period at a warehouse job I hate. Congratulations." "This isn't a game I was trying to win," I replied. "These are your consequences." He laughed bitterly. "You sound like a judge." "No judge forgave your traffic tickets," I said. "I did. No company waived your late fees. I paid them. I'm not doing that anymore." His jaw tightened. For a moment I thought he'd walk out. Instead, he stared at the table. "Do you ever think," he muttered, "that maybe you pushed so hard to be perfect because you were scared of ending up like the rest of us?" The question landed where he intended, to hurt, but also to reveal something ugly and true. "Of course I was scared," I said. "Our whole childhood was watching bills pile up. I decided I'd rather be exhausted and solvent than relaxed and terrified. But my fear doesn't excuse your choices, and your fear doesn't excuse them either." We sat in silence, the clatter of cups filling the gap. "So what now?" he finally asked. "You going to let me drown?" "No," I said slowly. "I'm going to let you swim. That's different. I will listen. I will give you the number of a financial counselor my company offers to family. I will drive you to your first appointment if you want, but I will not write checks. I will not call your landlord. I will not lie for you." "You'd really watch me get evicted?" he pushed. "If that's what your choices lead to," I answered. "Yes." "Have you ever had to look someone you love in the eye and say, 'I won't rescue you'?" And mean it? Spring came to Chicago slowly, slush giving way to clear sidewalks and the kind of pale sunlight that makes you believe in second chances. I passed my licensing exam in March. When the email came through, "Congratulations, you have achieved a passing score." I stared at it for a long time, not just because of what it meant professionally, but because of what it symbolized. I had finally invested in myself with the same intensity I used to reserve for saving my family. I closed on my tiny condo in April. It wasn't glamorous. One bedroom, creaky floors, a view of a brick wall, but every inch of it was paid for with my decisions, not my guilt. I hung the keys on a hook by the door and felt something inside me settle. Meanwhile, Mark's life didn't magically improve. Reality rarely works like a feel-good montage. He did get evicted, 2 months after our cafe meeting. He tried one last Hail Mary text. "If you just cover this month, I swear I'll handle the rest." I typed and deleted 3 different responses before finally sending, "I'm sorry you're in this position. My offer for non-financial help still stands. The money does not." He didn't reply. Weeks later, Grandma filled in the blanks. He'd moved into a spare room at an older cousin's cramped house in the suburbs. No privacy, no glamour, no bad boy mystique. Just early shifts at the warehouse, shared groceries, and payment plans for debts he could no longer outrun. "He's angry less, and quiet more," she said. "I don't know which is better, but he goes to that counselor you found. He doesn't know I know that." In May, he texted again. "Therapist says I have to make amends. Don't get excited." I almost laughed. We met at a park this time. More neutral ground, more space between us. He spoke without looking at me at first. "I used to tell myself you helped because you loved feeling superior," he said. "Like I was your charity case. When you stopped, I realized something worse. I'd built my whole life around the assumption that you'd never actually do what you did. So when you followed through, everything fell apart." "It didn't fall," I said quietly. "It was already cracked. I just stopped holding it up." He nodded once, jaw working. "I said some disgusting things at Christmas," he muttered. "About you not being needed. About you wanting power. That wasn't fair." "No," I agreed. "It wasn't." The old me would have rushed in there with, "It's okay, I understand." The new me let the weight of it sit between us. He swallowed. "I'm not asking you to go back to paying for stuff," he added quickly, like he was afraid I might offer. I don't want you to hate me." "I don't hate you," I said. "I'm just done sacrificing my mental health to keep you comfortable. I learned something this year. Sacrifice without boundaries isn't love. It's self-destruction, and the people who truly love you won't demand that kind of death from you." He finally looked at me. "So where does that leave us?" "Two adults," I said, "who share a childhood and a last name. I'm willing to build something new with you. Conversations, visits, the occasional sarcastic meme, if you keep doing the work you've started. But there will be no more secret transfers, no more bailouts. If you gamble, drink, or spend yourself into a hole, you climb out." He exhaled, a long, shaky breath. "That's fair," he admitted. "Probably the first fair thing you've asked for from me in years." We walked a loop around the park, not as savior and dependent, but as two people trying to figure out whether there was a relationship left under the rubble of money and resentment. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. He still made defensive jokes. I still felt old anger tug at me. But there was also something new. Honesty, without debt attached. That night, sitting on the floor of my still bare living room, I thought about everything that had happened since the moment he mocked my Christmas envelope. The laughter, the begging, the eviction, the exam, the keys in my hand. And I realized the real revenge was never watching him suffer. It was finally refusing to sacrifice myself to protect him from the life he was choosing. The deeper lesson was simpler and harsher than any holiday movie ending. Loving your family does not mean bankrupting your future. Sacrifice must have limits if you want to stay sane. Healthy families respect those limits. Unhealthy ones call them betrayal, until reality forces them to grow. I learned that loving myself is the foundation for every relationship I will ever build, including the ones with the people I share blood with. Without that foundation, everything eventually cracks. So tell me honestly, how far do you think someone should go for family before they say, "This is enough"? And if you were sitting where I sat that night, envelope in hand, laughter in your face, 15 minutes away from everyone begging you to keep bleeding, what would you have done?